Sacred science, the ideology and or the leader have the one and only truth. Members should only seek answers in group teachings. Doctrinal logic is airtight. Leaders are above criticism, and those who question or criticize are immoral.
Yep.
One word. Yep, that's right. It really does summarize, though, that there is almost like you can tell whether something has entered into that realm of sacredness and almost religiosity by whether or not it sounds like blasphemy to say anything against it, or whether it's treated as blasphemy. And I would say that the way that the council culture, the way that dissent or doubt or criticism is handled is just, it's absolutely considered blasphemy. That's how it appears to me from an outside perspective. Has that been your experience the whole time? Do you think that's a moving target? What do you think?
That has been my experience the whole time. I wouldn't have said it was back then. Like, I wouldn't have compared it to blasphemy, but that is what I call it now. It's what I called when I had a sort of kind of conversation with a friend who was not agreeing with me, and it was a kind of intense sort of conversation. That's what I said in it, is that I really don't care that you're calling me transphobic, because it literally just sounds like you're accusing me of blasphemy. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right.
Yeah.
So, knowing what it is, how powerful is it in your experience, or how powerful was it?
Severe.
Okay, mystical manipulation. Events and experiences are orchestrated, manipulated, or reframed to appear supernatural and prove that the leader is chosen and the doctrines are true. So we can see this in religious contexts where there may be some sort of event that a church organization is having, and a storm comes in and wipes out all the buildings except for the building they were going to be in. And it's, oh, this is a miracle. It proves God favors us. Or it could be another storm and it wipes out their building, and they'll say, this proves that God is testing us. He wants us to grow in strength. Either way, they can reframe whatever happens to give supernatural or extra significance to it, which always points to the truthfulness of the group or its teachings. Other instances of mystical manipulation would be somebody gets sick. A significant percentage of those people are going to get healed eventually. And so there's some religions that have a faith healing paradigm. And so what they'll do is someone will come in, they'll lay hands on them, they'll say a prayer, and then if the person is healed, then they'll attribute it to the power of the supernatural claims. But if the person is not healed, then some other narrative will be said. They weren't really faithful enough, or they held secret doubts in their heart, and this is where that blame reversal thing happens. Or even they could say it's actually fulfilling God's higher purpose for you to get sick or to die. So either way, the group wins. But that is a form of mystical manipulation where you're attributing meaning to something that happens that may not be related to it at all. And on one sense, I kind of want to, is that what's going on, where instead of faith-based healing, we have medical and surgical interventions for which we do not have as strong evidence of their efficacy as we would other more conventional diseases and their therapies. And so if we apply hormone and surgical therapy to someone and they have a good response, then we can say, see, it's all true. But if we apply these therapies to someone, they have a bad response, then we can blame the person, never actually having to question the paradigm of the therapy itself. That, I think, as an outsider, that's as close as I could get to taking something for which there could be any number of outcomes, but then injecting meaning into it that points to the truthfulness.
I wrote a blog post on thinking about the idea of mystical manipulation. One of the examples that I looked up was there was like a guru that like literally electrified the space around him, so that when his followers came, then they would be like, feel like a tingling, and then they would be like, oh. But the one that I think about, so when I first came out, or when I was first thinking about whether I was going to come out, starting questioning my gender, I reframed the context of my entire life basically around that narrative. And I think that's where the parallel is, that I think it was more that the narrative was there, and then I changed all of my experiences around it. So for example, in childhood, I liked role playing. I liked just playing pretend. And a lot of the characters that I played were male. So when I looked back on that, I was like, oh, a lot of the characters that I played were male. That means that I was a boy the whole time. So that, for example, that would be one of the things. Or I didn't like wearing dresses. That means I was a boy the whole time. So it was just taking all of these different things that I thought were like proof and then rearranging them all around this narrative that transgender is something that I could possibly be, and then moving forward with that. There's a type of delusional thinking called apophenia, and that's it's the basis for conspiracy theories, where you see meaningful things in what is essentially random noise, which I think is the same sort of thing. And that's how I describe my coming out process, is that I saw meaning in things that were completely disconnected and had nothing to do
Yeah.
with it. But yeah,
No,
that's
I could see it. That's actually, that is very appropriate with it. All right. What do you think then?
perhaps moderate. I know it's not really, I think it doesn't really hit the supernatural part as much, but
Okay, we'll hit moderate. So the next one is emotion over intellect. Emotion is emphasized as the preferred decision-making tool. The value of using reason is downplayed. Doctrines are frequently taught in emotional contexts, such as through stories told in tearful or gentle tones. What do you think?
I think a lot of the trans community is focused around feelings over facts. And it was a lot of like my decision to transition was, I am really naturally a very logical person. And so I tried to work through it in a logical sense. But in a lot of my journal entries, I found a lot of sentences where I was basically saying, but this feels right, so I'm going to do this anyway. And that is a lot of what is emphasized when people are trying to decide whether to transition on like forums and so on. Most of the answers that they will get have more to do with people telling you to trust your gut or go with what you think feels right, rather than trying to look at it through any sort of like logical process.
And people would say that's consistent with how the idea is centered, where it really is in self-expression and how you feel that determines your identity. So then it would make sense of that. People focusing on epistemology would say that in line with that postmodern way, looking at all of these things only through the objective lens of rationality and facts is going to leave people on the margins, and you've got to pay attention to those things. And that's why we allow this emotion over intellect to take place, because this is in the realm of social interactivity, not in the realm of hard science. But on the other side, then they want to have the hard science back them up and say the science is settled. So it's a double standard.
Yeah, the constant suicide threats is another thing
Yeah.
here, where stories told through tearful tones. Yeah, that's people being all like, "Oh, would you rather have a live son or a dead daughter?" sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think this falls under that.
All right. So what would you say?
Intense.
Okay.